everyone, Cleo here and welcome to my channel. If you notice a change of lighting in this video compared to my other videos, it's just because I'm filming in the nighttime for once. So normally I try to work with natural light, which isn't necessarily that much better because it's coming from the window over there, so it's like only lighting one part of my face. So I don't actually know whether this might actually not be an improvement on the matter or something like that. But in case you were wondering, that's why the lighting is different. So today is going to be a wrap up in two parts. So I'll be talking about the books that I finished this month, and then I'll be talking about the books that I'm carrying over into December, and then maybe about some changes I might need to do to my December TBR because it's becoming way too big because of the 3 carryovers. So maybe I'll be dropping one. So in any case, first book I finished this month, and I also posted a book review of this a couple of days back, so I'll be giving my full thoughts in that book review, and then in case you're interested I will link it down below, but I'll try to keep it brief in here. And that is 10 minutes and 38 seconds in this Strange World by Elif Shafak. This is a book that was on the shortlist for the Booker Prize 2019, and that's why I did a book talk on it as well in my Booker Book Talk series. So every year starting last year, I tried to read the shortlist for the Booker Prize. I don't necessarily want to finish before the Booker Prize is announced. I don't mind reading books after the winner has been announced. So in this case, this is the 3rd book I'm reading of the shortlist. I read it after the winner was announced. I still have 3 to go. I'm actually also reading some books of the long list this year, and that's been an absolutely wonderful experience. Some of my favorite books this year have come off of the long list rather than the short list. So maybe I'll be continuing this practice into next year. But so in any case, 10 minutes 38 seconds in this Strange World is a book about a prostitute living in Istanbul, and she has just been killed at the very beginning of the book. And so these 10 minutes and 38 seconds actually refer to the time that apparently it would take your consciousness to die after your body has died. So this 10 minutes 38 seconds is not like a standard, but it's like the longest possible period so that your consciousness can stay awake. And so Layla, our protagonist, is looking back on her life throughout 10 minutes and 38 seconds. So we basically get like a memory per minute, and all of these memories are very much linked to smells, to tastes that have formed an impression on her throughout her life. And so we get a clue about her early life, and then how she ended up in Istanbul in the situation she is in now, and the friends she met along the way. Now, what the premise doesn't tell you about is that there's actually a second part to this novel, and that is after these 10 minutes and 38 seconds, and it's about her friends kind of dealing with her demise, dealing with the fact that as friends they have no control over her body. They are not allowed to bury her, they're not allowed to make the decisions about her body, and so they try to reclaim power over it. I think that was the most interesting thing about the book, and the theme of how friends basically have so little rights over your body when you are dead, how they have so little rights to information about you, and how sometimes the bond of friendship can be even stronger than the bond of family. And in general, I think that it was a good read, but it wasn't anything spectacular, and because of the 2 different parts and the 2 very different perspectives, I felt this to be a very disjointed read. I actually preferred the second part a lot to the first part, even though the premise for the first part is what drew me into this book. So I would say I enjoyed it, but I don't necessarily recommend it to anybody, because I felt it was a little bit like there was something lacking in this discrepancy of tone. Next up, I finished another book in the reread for the Stormlight Archive. So I'll link a video down below in which Elle from Elliot Brooks posted a call out for a Stormlight Archive reread. So we've been rereading them over the past few months. So last month in October we read The Way of Kings. In November we were reading the sequel, and next month we will be reading Oathbringer. But so for the month of November we were reading Words of Radiance by Sanderson. Now, Words of Radiance is my favorite in the series so far. I do know that a lot of people actually have problems with Words of Radiance, and I actually had some problems with rereading it as well. You know, when I first read it, I completely flew through this. I read it in 2 weeks without no problems. I was constantly like looking to read more, getting on, and things like that. I still finished it within 2 weeks. I actually finished it faster than I finished it the first time around. But really what kept me going this time around was some scenes that I knew were happening, but it also made it very clear to me how long you have to wait for those scenes. So this is a like 1000-page book, and I think like the first of the two scenes that I was most looking forward to happens at around the 800-page mark. And I do feel like upon reread it flowed a little bit slower. I felt like not a whole lot was happening at the beginning. There are things happening of course, but like the big moments are really at the end. And whereas I had that experience with The Way of Kings as well, but in The Way of Kings I went into it expecting like, okay, it's kind of slow at the beginning and at the end it's really like fast paced, and then I was surprised about certain things that I discovered in the first part, and I was really like seeing like I was very much into the world from the beginning, and so I had a very different reading experience in that sense. In this one I was expecting it to be super fast paced the entire time because that was my recollection of my reading experience with it, and so in this sense I felt like it was actually not as fast paced in the beginning as I thought it was. But so all in all it's still a very good book. I really enjoy it. I think the character of Shalon, which wasn't my favorite in the first one, really shines in this one, and it really made me come over to her side. I really enjoy her character as well, and so I'm very happy that I read this. I will also say the next one is also in this genre. So the next one is also in this series, and that is Edgedancer by Sanderson. This wasn't on the schedule for the reread for Stormlight Archive, but I absolutely love this little novella, and I actually think it's necessary. It's not necessary as in it's not essential for you to understand the third book in the series. So you don't need to read this one in order for you to be able to follow the third book in the series. However, there's some background in here that I think is very interesting and very essential. There's a certain character that also undergoes a character transformation in this book, and so if you don't read this little novella, you might find it weird that this side character that we stumbled upon in Words of Radiance suddenly has a whole different agenda in Oathbringer. But in this one we are following a character called Lift. Lift is introduced in an interlude in Words of Radiance, and she's an absolutely great, funny character. So she's supposed to be a 12-year-old possible Radiance, and so she's very much like she's offering some comedic relief in my sense in the books, and I really love her character. She also comes across as being like very callous, or she's just in it for the food, you know, she doesn't really care about the grand scheme of things, but there are often these kind of hints that show you that she cares a lot more than she wants to let on. And in Edgedancer is a great example of that. I really love this one. I love her dynamic with her Spren, and yeah, I really encourage you guys to read this one if you're reading Stormlight Archive. Now I just realized that I haven't really given you a premise for Stormlight Archive. It's a bit difficult to do because there's so much to the plot, but just consider it like if you love epic fantasy, definitely have a go with this one. It's one of the newest ones out there, and I mean, if you're an epic fantasy lover, I think you need to read this one. At least you need to give it a go. The majority of people also really love this one, and actually I think Words of Radiance at the moment is the like highest rated book on Goodreads. So that means that most of the people have really enjoyed this one when they read it. And then the final book that I want to be talking about for the month of November, as in the book that another book that I finished in the month of November. And this is also the reason I think why I had to push back some of the books, or at least why I'm not as far into some of the books as I hoped that would be, and that is The Plot Against America by Philip Roth. Now, saying it like that, it sounds as if I'm going to be super harsh about this book, and that's not the case. I think it is masterfully done. I think it is very well done. It is very important for our times, and it's even more impressive that it's so important for our times because it was written in 2004. So it was not written in our current political climate, but it does reference, it seems to refer to the current political climate in the US in that case. So the book is actually imagining a different outcome to an election. So it's looking at the final election for, I think it was for Roosevelt's third term, but it is pitting him against a different opponent. It is pitting him against Charles Lindbergh, who had some affiliations with the Germans. Those weren't widespread at the time apparently, but this book is looking at what if he would have come out about his affiliations with the Germans, would have sold it as a sort of like positive selling point, and would have clearly stated that he is actually against Jews. In this book, even though he is known to have associated with Hitler, even though he is very open about his criticism of the Jewish people, he wins the election. And so this is a book in which we are following a young Philip Roth, who is living with his family in New Jersey, and he is growing up against his background of an America that is very much negative towards Jewish people. Now, I think the greatest thing about this book is that for the majority of this book, nothing actually happens towards Jewish people. There are no like open calls for let's kill all the Jews or let's try and put them in concentration camps or anything like that. But the uncertainty and the fear of the Jewish people throughout this book is so masterfully done. At the very beginning, you are kind of skeptic along with certain people in this book of like, but nothing is really happening and nothing has changed, you know. But and then you feel like certain characters who do think that things have changed, who are very open about the fact that this new president is going to destroy their position in society, you kind of feel skeptical about it, and you think that they're sort of like doom, how do you call it? Like they're sort of like doom thinkers. It's not the exact term, but okay. But throughout, you become more and more uncertain about there. You become more and more. You start to see more and more things happening and things affecting the life of this Jewish family. You start to feel more and more like there might be some truth there. They might actually be coming for the Jews in this book. And that I think is real mastery that has happened through. The negative parts I have about this one, first of all, it read super slow. I think that is mainly due to this atmosphere of fear and uncertainty that kind of makes it difficult to like push through all of the time. And also I think that it wasn't really well handled at the very end. At the penultimate chapter or something we are getting a switch of perspective. So we've always followed young Philip Roth, and like the second to last chapter, we suddenly get like an account of different articles or different podcast or radio announcements or things like that. And so we get a shift in tone. And then we go back to the perspective of Philip Roth afterwards, in which we see how he has experienced the moments that were mentioned in the chapter before. But that really didn't work for me. I find it very difficult to focus on these journal entries. It also took like, I don't know, 20 pages, 30 pages of these. So I found it very difficult to focus on those. And then I found it difficult to get back into the perspective of young Philip Roth, because I already knew what was going to happen, I guess. I think it would have been more, it would have had a bigger impact if we would have seen these events taking place in the uncertainty and the fear of not knowing what was going to happen. And so because we're given like a insight in what is going to happen already in the chapter beforehand, I think that took away a little bit of my experience with the final chapter. But overall, I think it's a very powerful book. It's like, it really masters it. It really manages to bring across the atmosphere of the fear and anxiety that these people are fearing, the uncertainty that they've had to deal with on a daily level. And it's a very interesting look at a possible spin on history, especially considering the current presidency in America. So I think it's not the easiest book to sell in that sense. I'm very happy that I read it, and I think it was a very good read. There are just these little small points that took away from my enjoyment of it, and it read very slow, so I didn't get around to a lot of other things in the month of November. So the books that I'll be carrying over into December, some of them weren't on my November TBR at all, but the first one is, and that is The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. So I'm currently about 40 pages in only, so I don't know, I knew already that it was going to be like super ambitious, but I don't know why I thought that I was going to get like a 700-page book. And another one that is coming up done in that month when I was already going to be reading Words of Radiance. So I am reading The Fountainhead on my commute to work. I will continue doing so, and then maybe I will also sometimes pick it up in the evening to get a bit further into it. I'm liking it so far, actually. I don't know why I went into this thinking that I wouldn't like it, because obviously there was a part of me that really wanted to read this book. But so it's a very well-known book. It's a very influential book as far as I'm aware as well. I didn't really know too much about it at this point. What I know is that we are following a main character who's called Howard Rourke, and he has just been kicked out of architecture school. But he doesn't seem to care too much, you know. He has a very new vision on architecture, and that's actually the reason why he got kicked out. So he's not very interested in making these sort of like tributes to the old style. He's not interested in making things pretty or in making them like in a certain Greek style, Ionic style, whatever styles are out there. He's not interested in all of that. What he is interested in is making buildings that are functionally sound, and he puts function in front of he puts function at the foreground the entire time, and his teachers don't really understand why he cannot just learn about the old style, why he wants to do something drastically new. They're saying like, yeah, but architecture is always a tribute to the past and an improvement towards the future, but we cannot just make leaps and bounds, you know. We have to keep on paying tribute to the past. And so he drastically disagrees with that, and so he doesn't really care that much about the fact that he has been kicked out. So this is basically more or less all that has happened at this point, but I have been really liking the writing style so far, and so I'm really interested to see how this book continues on from here. Next up is a book that I cannot believe I have to put in this sort of like carryover pile. I started this book in August, but let me say that I just read like one chapter in August, then decided that because of my reading schedule I wasn't going to be able to fit it in the month of September, for example, or even October. So I've done basically no reading since August in it. I have done a fair bit of reading in it in the month of November, but I'm still only on page 136, and that is Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. This is my favorite Harry Potter. As you can see, maybe I'm reading it in Spanish at the moment, and so I'm somewhat annoyed at myself for not getting further ahead. However, I will say that we still haven't gone to Hogwarts, and I do feel like the whole part at the beginning where he's like going to the ministry for his inquiry is not my favorite part of this book. So hopefully once I get past that point I will be able to fly through this one. Ideally I will really finish it this year, because in 2020 I already have planned to read the 6th and 7th one, so it would be perfect to finish this one this year. But in case I have to carry it over, it's also not the worst thing in the world to have to carry it over into December. And then one book that I'm definitely sure I will be finishing in December, because I am already like past the halfway point at this point, so I am at page 258 of the 450 or something, some 200 pages to go, and it's Starsight by Brandon Sanderson. So I'm actually filming a reading vlog for this one as well that you can look forward to getting in the month of December. So Starsight is a sequel to Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. I think the entire series is called the Cytonic series. I might be mispronouncing that. It doesn't really mention it on the book itself, so that's also annoying a little bit. But so Skyward is a YA sci-fi series by Brandon Sanderson. Yes, the same Brandon Sanderson from the Stormlight Archive and from the novella Edgedancer that I did finish in the month of November. So Starsight came out on the 26th or 27th of November, which is also the reason why I haven't finished it yet, because this cover is the UK cover, and so it had to come from the UK to Belgium, so that gave me a little bit of a delay of 2 days before starting it. So I got my hands on this on the 29th, tried to finish it, but I wasn't able to. So Starsight is the sequel to Skyward, the first book in this series, a YA sci-fi. In this we are following Spensa. Spensa is a sort of like very arrogant, very brash personality, but this is the sort of characteristics that's very much approved in the society that we are following. So there's very much a focus on like bravery, on a sort of like aggressive stand in life, a sort of like claim your own like claim what you want, don't just be like hesitant, or don't just expect things to go your way, just make them go your way. And so there's very much a like a negative feelings around any act that is considered as being cowardice, like very much cowards are very much like pushed aside in this society. And so Spencer's father, at some point, he was part of the sort of like big flight academy. He was a very important pilot to them. But during the like biggest battle of their history, he apparently abandoned ship, and so he is branded a coward. He died in the battle nonetheless, and Spencer and her family are kind of like scraping to get by because they are associated with his act of cowardice. And so Spencer has dreamed all of her life to be able to go out there and fly the way that her father used to fly, but she is stumbling upon some blockades because people don't want her to fly. They don't want her to be sitting in that pilot seat because they say, you are the daughter of a coward, you will also be a coward. And so while Spencer is very aggressive and brash and saying, no, I'm not a coward, are you calling me a coward? Inwardly she has a struggle about feeling like, what if she is actually a coward like her father was? This is a very, very fun book to read. At first I thought I wasn't going to get along with the character of Spencer because of her aggressive and brash behavior, but you also sort of start to see that this is also a bit of a front that she is putting up. She is, of course, a lot more brash and aggressive than I am, for example, but she is also a girl struggling with her identity, a girl struggling with anxiety. She's putting a lot more of a tougher front than who she really is, so she really does also struggle with doubts with her identity and things like that. Also, I really loved all of the flight school sequences, so we get a lot of interesting flight sequences, we get a lot of like diagrams about the way that the planes look and things like that. So it's very much like a magical school setting, but instead of learning to do magic, we are learning how to fly spacecrafts. And so I really enjoyed this a lot, and the sequel I'm really looking forward to, and so far I'm really liking. There have been some parts where it's been like a little bit slower for me this time around, but I'm getting around to the more like action-packed parts. There's a lot of explaining to be doing in the sequel about certain new elements being introduced, and so we've kind of gotten through that point in this book, and so now we are ready to focus on the action again. So yeah, really looking forward to finishing this one in December. But so yeah, these are the books that I've finished in the month of November, and the ones that I'll be carrying over into the month of December. As I said before, I might have to do some shifts, and the shift I might do is Oathbringer. So Oathbringer is the third book in the Stormlight Archive. I read it in January, and that is the reason why I'm considering not rereading it in the month of December, because I might just wait for it. I might just do it in the month of November 2020 and be ready for the sequel, Rhythm of War, which is hopefully going to be coming out in December 2020. And that way I'll be having a big cushion for the month of December. And by big cushion, it'll mean that that I'm removing a 1,000-page book from my TBR, and I might actually have a TBR that's relatively manageable. So I think it was always my plan, and I'm definitely going to stick to it, is to finish all of the other books before I start Oathbringer. If I manage to finish all of the other books before the end of December, I'll definitely try to start Oathbringer still. It'll probably depend on what point we are in the month of December at that point, but if there's still time for it, I might still go for it. But otherwise, I'll be happy to just push it aside and to start maybe in a book that I want to finish in January at that point. So that's my plan for December. Hopefully that will give me a lot more cushion, and it will make me not feel like that much of a failure in the month of December. But so yeah, let me know down below if you've read any of these books, what your thoughts are on them. If you want to read any of these books, I'll be happy to answer any more questions that you might have about them without going into spoilers. And yeah, let me know if you have any suggestions for me for the month of December. It's going to be a busy month, but luckily I'm also taking 2 weeks off in the month of December, so I'll also have a big cushion there in that sense. So yeah, looking forward to my reading month, and hope you guys will have the same. Bye bye!